Hey guys, Martin here bringing you a Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we are going to talk about Tech LR Super 17, who is getting his EZA in a couple of days time. We should see his EZA details tweeted out tomorrow morning. Will be morning for me, it'll be, I guess technically still morning for the US, because I think Pacific time it's like 1 AM that they normally put out the tweets, so I guess technically it is still Sunday morning for everyone, unless you're in a time zone that's ahead of the UK and Europe, and then it's Sunday afternoon sometime, I guess. But this guy is going to have his EZA announced, and this is certainly going to be a very interesting one, right? Like, this guy, I think, is currently the oldest LR without an EZA. A lot of us thought he would get his EZA during the Global Dokkan campaign, because obviously being the GT theme, and like he fit on Omega's full leader skill, like, a lot of us just assumed that his EZA would be coming with that celebration, and obviously it did not. And so when Baby was announced, it was pretty like on the boards that this guy was going to EZA, especially when we saw his leader skill and the fact that he has Battle of Fate, and then obviously GT Bosses is one of the extras. So yeah, he gets his full leader skill. So Super 17, the LR, is an interesting unit. Super 17 has what? I guess if we don't count like the free-to-play, like there's the random, well, they're not free-to-play, they're like SR 17s that awaken into a Super 17, who for some reason has big bad bosses when the main ones don't, which is very weird. But ignoring that for a moment, Super 17 only has, what, 3 main units in the game. The AGL Dokkan Fest, that was one of the 120 mono leaders from that meta, being the Extreme AGL 120 lead, and he ended up aging very, very well, potentially even becoming one of the best like aging 120 leads overall, like when they got their EZAs and everything. I mean, damage reduction and building up defense goes a long way, right? So I'm looking forward to his super EZA for sure. And then of course we now have the STR 17 and Hellfire 17 that fuse into 17. So Super 17 doesn't have a huge amount of representation in the game, but man, when this guy released, I remember, you guys know I've always been a fan of Super 17. I just think his aesthetic is very cool. Like, obviously I'm not like a huge fan of GT, but I think Super 17 is pretty cool. You know, and like, people know this, right? He's been a meme on the channel for a while. So the day that he was announced, I was tagged all over the place on like Twitter and everything of people saying like, look, Ningen, Super 17 LR. So it's like, hell yeah, let's have a look, shall we? And yeah, talk about disappointing. I mean, this guy is interesting. He released on both versions at the same time. I went back to check the schedule because I couldn't remember when exactly he'd released or who he'd released with. And he was actually the Part 2 LR for the 2021 Golden Week celebration that was the physical GT Goku and Int GT Vegeta. And that was actually, of course, the first Golden Week that was actually a same time celebration on both versions of the game. Supposedly this was an idea that was put forward by Koto, who was obviously the producer for Global at the time. And I think overall the celebration was very, very successful. People liked the GT Super Saiyans. We got the EZAs for the Super Saiyan 4s, the 120 leads at the end of the celebration as like a big final thing, which was really cool. And obviously for Global, it was super hype because with the sync not being in place and the schedule being the way it was, it meant that if you'd summoned for the GT Super Saiyans and got them, and obviously had like the Super Saiyan 4s, the EZA'd and everything, when the anniversary rolled around at like the end of June, beginning of July, that GT Heroes team just absolutely destroyed all the anniversary content. And that was one of the, I guess, positive side effects of the games being separate, is once Golden Week started becoming a same time celebration, Global was getting access to units before the anniversary that JP didn't get until after the anniversary, and it made the anniversary content a lot easier. Now, same could probably not be said for Part 2 LR Tech Super 17. I mean, this guy just released with so many questionable choices in his kit, right? So he starts off with stats, just 170 attack and defense. Obviously, being Dokkan, they love to do this. He's got 17s all over his passive, so 17 and like 170%. Now, bear in mind, he leads GT bosses or androids, But then his passive is that he gets extra buffs per android's or target Goku character on the team. So if you run him on like a GT Bosses team with Omega characters and stuff like that, then he doesn't get a lot of the buff from his passive. So hopefully that's something that can be changed, like when he gets this EZA. And then after receiving an attack, he gets 17% attack and damage reduction 17% for 3 turns after the end of the turn. So in fact, I never really thought about the wording of this. So it's after the end of the turn. So that turn ends, and then he's not on the rotation anymore. And then technically that's turn 1 of his passive. So then when he comes back, that's turn 2, and then this will be active. So he'll have 17% extra attack and 17% damage reduction. Then he goes off rotation again, and that's turn 3. So then he comes back after that, and this isn't active anymore. Like, this is an absolutely terrible buff. Like, he gets damage reduction, but only for his next appearance. So he could take however many hits in that turn, and he doesn't get any kind of defensive buff. I don't think any other unit had that, or has had that since then. I mean, we've seen stuff where people get a buff, like, for the next turn, or buffs that increase, like, after they've been attacked. But, like, this one was just very, very questionable. So this is a major thing that I think needs to change. Honestly, this should be, like, per attack received, he should get 17% attack and 17% damage reduction, up to a maximum of like a certain amount for the damage reduction. The attack shouldn't have a cap, I think. And that should just be all within the turn as he takes hits. Because, you know, I mean, 17%, because they're going to probably stick with the weird, like, I say weird, but they're going to stick with their memes of like doing these numbers, right? Like Gohan's always having like 5-8 in their passive and stuff like that. They're probably going to stick to that, right? So if he gets 17% per attack received, I think something like maybe if he was to receive like 3 attacks or something as the maximum, because then that's like 51% damage reduction, and he could start with like 17% as well, maybe. So then once he's been hit like 4 times in the turn, he's got 68% damage reduction, something like that, potentially. And then also that could be for 3 turns without this at the end of the turn, right? So when he gets hit, he's getting 17% damage reduction for 3 turns up to like 3 times. So then that means once he's taken those like 3 hits in a turn, he'd have 68% damage reduction. And then when he comes back on his next rotation, he would still have that 68% damage reduction. That would actually be quite good. And then for every attack received, this was probably one of the biggest jokes for his passive, because I mean, with his links, and especially if you're running him with GT Bosses characters, Ki was potentially an issue for him. Every attack received, high chance of Ki +1 up to +7. I don't think any other unit has ever had this, at least that I can remember. There might be one, so let me know if there's just one that I'm forgetting about. But like, this was one of the big things, even though it's not a massive, like, it's not, I think it's not as bad as the whole damage reduction isn't until the next turn, but like, this is the one that people really joked about, because it's like, why did they even do this? High chance that he gets an extra key. Like, surely he should just get the extra key. Like, if you get really bad RNG, then you could just have runs where like he's just never getting the extra key, and so it's a struggle to super with him on every single turn, which is just bizarre design choice. So he needs a lot of work to be saved, I think, but there definitely is the potential. And the other big thing I really wanted to talk about, I probably should have gone into that really fully, talking about his release before I got into his like some of my kit like expectations. But one of the craziest things about this guy is how absolutely screwed he got by the release of certain mechanics after his release, and not long after his release. Because obviously we all know, right, Super 17, I mean, I say we all know, you might not know if you don't know much about GT. The Super 17's whole gimmick is that he absorbs ki, and it makes him stronger. So when he fights Super Saiyan 4 Goku, Goku's constantly firing like ki blasts and stuff at him, and he's just absorbing it and becoming stronger and stronger. Now, I don't think, and I might be misremembering, obviously we've had characters that counter super attacks, like the Super Saiyan 4s, but we didn't have, unless I'm missing someone again, a character that just negates or like absorbs super attacks. I think there must be someone I'm missing, I think. But what's so funny is this guy released in May 2021, and then going by the JP timeline, when we then got to the Tanabata celebration in June, so this is literally like the next month, we got the release of the Tech Goku and Vegeta that fuse into Super Gogeta, and Super Gogeta has when receiving an unarmed super attack from an enemy who is hit by the character's ultra super attack, nullifies it within the turn. Now imagine only releasing a month earlier, but imagine if Super 17 released and had when receiving a Ki Blast super attack. I mean, it doesn't even need to be this. This part was always kind of annoying about Gogeta, but yeah, when receiving a Ki Blast super attack, nullifies it. Now, a better example is the part 2 from this Tanabata, which was Janemba, and Janemba just straight up has, when receiving a Ki Blast super attack, high chance of nullifying it. And this guy came out like a month, or this, I guess technically he came out 20th of July, so now we're talking almost 2 months later. But why does LR Super 17 not have this? Now again, there might be a character that I'm forgetting, but I think this was when they introduced super attack nullifications with Gogeta and Janemba. Someone's going to let me know in the comments, I'm sure. There's probably like a massive one that I'm forgetting that came out before these guys, but I just can't think off the top of my head. And I looked at the schedule for like the characters that came out after Super 17. And yeah, both of these guys have nullifications. And then the real kicker was a few months later, like it was quite a bit later in the year. We got to November of 2021. So we're talking like the, you know, half, 6 months or so later. But that's when we got the release of the tech androids. And the tech androids have nullify Ki Blast super attacks. If you're at 35% or more HP, they just nullify it straight up. And of course, their banner unit, which is probably the most appropriate Super 17 type thing, is these guys have, when receiving a Ki Blast super attack, absorbs it and recovers 39% of the damage dealt as HP. This is the mechanic that a Super 17 should have. Like, whether they restrict it or not, like, this is a mechanic that a Super 17 should have. And obviously, we did see the release of the STR Super 17 Dokkan Fest in 2023. But this guy, even once you fuse into Super 17, he only has the ability to absorb Ki Blast super attacks when you're at 70% or less HP. And the whole point of like Super 17 absorbing energy and like the idea of him being a tank type character is that he should be able to absorb Ki Blast super attacks when you're on full health, because you want him to be a slot 1 tank if he's going to be designed to be a defense. Like this guy, after receiving an attack, gets an additional attack. Receiving attacks builds up his defense. But if he gets hit with a Ki Blast super when you're on 71% or more HP, then he takes damage from it. So some of the bigger bosses in the game would kill him, like in the meta that he released in. Like, I know they don't want to make him too OP, but yeah, a Super 17's main thing should always just be that he absorbs Ki Blast super attacks, right? And this guy just, unfortunately, very let down by the time of release. Because the thing is as well, now this is something that in theory I guess they could do. I don't know how, like, mechanically this works, but in theory one of the things they could do, but I guess they don't want to add mechanics to old units, but like this Super 17, he obviously has an animation for absorbing a Ki Blast super attack. This guy doesn't, as part of his, like, I don't want to say kit, because then that's what we talk about with like their passive, but in terms of literally the coding of this unit, like he has a 12 key super, he has a super, he doesn't have a Ki Blast absorption animation, so they can't give him in his passive a thing absorbing abilities like the, you know, the way that these guys do, where they actually have a little like scene that plays, like a little animation that plays. What they could do, however, is just give him in his passive when receiving a Ki Blast super, kind of like Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks has, just gives him a massive defense buff. And then obviously, rather than Gotenks has a counter, because of course he has an animation, but gives him a massive defense buff, like maybe a massive damage reduction temporarily, right? So it counts for just when he's being hit by that super. And then put like, and recovers 20% HP, or it could be a percentage of the damage even. Because the thing that this is what I was saying, the thing they could do, I guess, technically, is that because an animation exists in the game of a Super 17 absorbing a Ki Blast super, I don't know how much coding or anything it would take to like add that animation into this guy's kit, but that's just something that they have never done, and I don't think they would do, because in theory it would be possible, but I just don't see it happening, right? So I think what they will do instead is just give him something in his passive that says like when receiving a Ki Blast super, and then temporarily like massive defense buff, and then like recover some HP. I think that would be very, very useful. And it's just something that, like, it feels weird for a Super 17 to not have anything in his kit that is absorbing a Ki Blast Super. Now, the AGL one didn't, because obviously he's a much earlier unit as well from way back when. But he was a very good unit in terms of, like, the damage reduction and just building up defense. Like, arguably, at the time of their release, like, obviously, when this guy came out, AGL Super 17 was obviously getting on in his time. But, like, in terms of when they released, AGL Super 17 was probably just straight up better than Tech Super 17. And then even these guys, like, they weren't super great on release, but, like, you could do some funny stuff with them if you could actually get to, like, fuse into Super 17. I'm really hoping that the Easy A for these guys increases their thing, because obviously their fusion is an active skill. So this condition can't be changed, so it's always going to be an issue fusing with them into Super 17. So our only hope for any other fellow Super 17 enjoyers is that this guy's Easy A is really good. I mean, the AGL one is due a Super Easy A at some point as well, but yeah, there's a few things that they could do in order to make this guy's Easy A good, but I just wanted to lay out kind of the story of his release, how I feel like he really was sort of fumbled in terms of, if he just released a few months later, he would have had like a super attack negation, surely, but unfortunately not, and he's just, like, even on release just really wasn't very good. I really wanted to cope for him to be good. Like, I pulled him when he came out, and yeah, it's just very, very disappointing. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Can you think of any other characters from your own experience playing the game who were as disappointing on release as this Super 17? In before everybody says Raditz. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts and what you would like to see to make Super 17 good with his Easy A. Let me know down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.